Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm very excited about today. We're still on the topic of team success. And so today, as we look at unlocking team success, John, one of the greatest topics I feel around team effectiveness is their ability to give decisions and make decisions as a team. And so what's your thoughts on team decision making?
Yeah, and I think, Mohamed, that this can be one of the most critical discussions when talking about teams, because we've talked about the 4 phases that teams go through. Teams may have gone through some pretty massive storming, and now they're at a point where they need to decide what to do to move forward. So maybe they have brainstormed a bunch of ideas. They've narrowed that list down through several different techniques, and now they need to make the final decision as to what to do to move forward. Well, there are a number of ways teams can make that final decision, techniques, tools that they can use, one of which will absolutely destroy the team. And it's actually probably one of the more common methodologies used to make decisions. And when I share this with people, they're like, I hadn't even thought about that. No wonder the team really fell apart after that decision was made.
Let's hold off on that one till the last thing, because I feel like that's
as a teaser, right? No, let's go. We'll go ahead and talk about them. And again, most of these people are familiar with the most desirable way to make a decision with the team is to reach consensus, right? And what does consensus mean exactly? It's basically that even though it might not be my number 1 or even my number 2 choice, I can still live with it. I can get behind it. Every member of the team gets behind the decision, even though it may not be their first choice. Now, there's a great tool that people can use to see if a group has reached consensus or not. It'd be really helpful if you could see those thought bubbles above people's heads like you see in the cartoons, because people could be nodding their head yes, like they're in agreement, but in that thought bubble it's like, oh, this is a really stupid idea. This is going to fail miserably, but I don't want to be not a team player, so I'm going to nod my head yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a tool called Fist of 5. It's really simple. As a facilitator, you say, okay, it seems like we're starting to reach consensus on option B. Let's do a quick Fist of 5. And what that means is everybody puts their hands up, and if you're in total agreement, it's a 5. If you're in total disagreement, it's a fist, and then everything in between. So it's just a way to get a simple gauge on where everybody is in that thought. Because sometimes we have reached consensus, but we don't recognize that, and we just keep beating the horse over and over and over and over again, wasting a lot of time. So by doing a quick Fist of 5, I use it pretty often. You can say, hey, we don't need to discuss this any further. We got all 4s and 5s. We've reached consensus. Let's move forward. So before I go to the next ones, what are your thoughts on consensus reaching?
I think I completely agree. I think as a team, in order to build relationships too, and be able to feel like you have a common line purpose, and a shared mindset, which is the core fundamental requirement for team effectiveness, I think you need to learn how to reach consensus. I think, you grow up in the task world, you might have, and I'm thinking of an org chart right now, you might have an HR head, a VP of operations, a quality person, but they're all good at their tasks, but they're not really a team.
Right.
And so task work and teamwork are very different. And so when I look at making an effective team, I think they need to go on their own journey to learn how to effectively make decisions. And one thing, obviously, consensus is the outcome of many tools. And so I love the fist to five one, because I think that is a very quick approach. The other approaches I've used that are similar to some degree and also effective, I've used the six hat thinking method by Edward de Bono. And what he does, or what his framework does, is it looks at it six different perspectives. So people are on the room when we say, hey, does everyone consent to this? Okay. Could we live with it? Yes. Okay. Before we move forward, I want to just play a little game here. And I would assign people different hats and be like, all right, you're going to be the white hat. So let's look at this you're going to look at this from the perspective of facts. Okay. And so I want you to tell me from a factual standpoint, what do you think of this direction that we're going? And another person will say, you're going to be the red hat, emotion wise. How do how are the people going to react emotionally to this decision? And then I would give someone like the black hat, and I'd be like, from a critical judgment standpoint, what do you think about this? And so I would assign different people different hats, and then have us re-look at these different decisions from that we're competing against, or we've already decided as a consensus around what are the different perspectives. So that's one approach that I used.
Very good. Yeah, that's great. So another decision making is autocratic, right? A dictator, someone that's in some authority position that's basically, hey, thank you for providing all this input. The team is providing input, but I'm going to make the final decision. So whenever there's someone of importance that's on the team, like a CEO, as a facilitator, one of the things that I asked the CEO right up front before we've even started the team meeting is, a simple question: do you have a vote or the vote? If you have the vote, then we need to let the team know that they're not really making the decision. You are. They're providing input. That will avoid a lot of frustration later on if the team thinks they're the one that's going to be making the decision. But if the leader says, I have a vote, then I'm like, okay, then that means you're equal. While we're in this team meeting, you're equal to everyone else, and I'm going to treat you like everyone else.
Yeah.
And you've got to be good. You've got to be comfortable with whatever decision the team decides to go with. And you're part of the consensus as much as everyone else, but it may not be your first choice. It may not even be your second choice.
Yep.
So I'm going to treat you like an equal. And again, clearing that up front before the team even comes together is critically important to avoid a lot of frustration later on.
So going into that space, where do you have a vote or the vote? I love how you worded that. If I know that going into it as a facilitator, or if I know going into a team that is the dynamic that we're going to come up with, I usually do a decision-making matrix up front. And what that decision matrix is here's all the different options that we have. And then I would say one of two things. Let's put all the pros and cons for each one of them. Let's flag the ones of, what pros are, like what are the requirements of this decision as an outcome, and which one of these pros hit that or cons miss that. And then we would all kind of take a vote on what we think, or we would provide feedback of how strong we think a pro is over a con, or a con over a pro. And then we would leave the leader of that team to make the final decision because they put that out there.
Right. So that would be an autocratic kind of a decision-making process.
Yeah.
Again, the team is providing inputs, the pros and cons, but the leaders
Sorry.
No, just going to say, and the leader is going to make the final decision.
Yeah, but it's still in that same space where the leader is going to make that final decision. This probably could work in both scenarios, even if the team is going to make the final decision. There's the Eisenhower Matrix as well that I found very effective, where it has like the urgent and important matrix. How important is this and how urgent is this? And then based on that decision, we put the different things that we want to make decisions on, and then it kind of shows you, hey, this is super important and super urgent. And so it kind of makes its own self visible of why this is the decision that we need to take.
Right. Yep.
That could work in both scenarios. I have seen the more authoritarian type of approach where the leader is the one that's going to make the decision, that something gets very high important and high urgent, but they want to work on something that's a little bit less. Okay, but at least we made it visible.
Right.
That's really not creating an effective team. That's just that's more of a hierarchy, how to make decisions through the hierarchy rather than how to make decisions through a team.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, but I've seen that happen. I'm sure you have as well, where the team thinks they're making the final decision, and then they're overruled by the leader who was planning to make the decision all along.
100%.
So it's critically important to work that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
So we have consensus, which is by far the best. We have autocratic / dictator. The third most common way decisions are made, and this is the one that will destroy the team, is voting. Voting is the absolute worst way because now we're not talking things like multi-voting. That's a completely different tool. We're talking straight up and down voting. So let's say we have we've narrowed the list of ideas down to the top 2, and now we got to pick one. So it's really easy just to say, let's vote, because it's simple, it's democratic, everybody gets a say. The reason that will instantly destroy the team is because once you do a vote, even if it's a hidden vote, people can still kind of figure out who voted which way. But the moment you do a vote, you now have winners and losers, right? Let's say that you have 12 people on the team and 7 of them voted for option A and 5 voted for option B. The 7 are all over there giving each other high fives. Yeah, we're going with option A. The 5 that voted for option B now have that big L on their forehead. They're losers. No one likes to be a loser, right? So what do they now have to do? They have to now sit back and watch option A be implemented and then pick it apart to the point where it's probably going to fail. And when it does fail, the 5 losers can say, ha, told you so. You should have voted with us. We're not the losers. You're the losers. And now the team has completely disintegrated. So the moment you have winners and losers on the team is no longer a team. It's 2 subgroups that are now in the same room, one of which hates the other.
Yeah. I've witnessed that in so many scenarios where the leader will be like, all right, everyone in the room, we're looking between these 2 softwares, or we're looking between, these 2 approaches, or what framework should we use. I've even had this conversation with when we were starting our lean transformation, and people were trying to talk about the scientific method and should we use the A3 template or the DMAIC template, and people voted in the room. And that caused chaos later because people were trying to show okay, we end up with the A3, but they're saying poking at the A3, trying to find all the flaws in it just to kind of prove that it wasn't the right decision, where in the end of the day they're both really using the same backbone of PDCA, and so it's really just a template, a documentation tool to be able to capture the PDCA cycle. And so, but what did it do? It caused people to scrutinize the hell out of A3. And
and that's a great example, right? Because Plan, Do, Check, Act, A3, DMAIC, they all are basically using the scientific method to drive problem solving and continuous improvement. And I bet you 100% of the people in the room would agree that there is a need for some sort of methodology, roadmap to do this stuff. So they're all in the same book. But the moment you take that vote, now you have that winner group and loser group, and the loser group is, got their tail between their legs. They're feeling hurt. They're feeling pain because they're part of the losers, and they now have to attack the winners in every step of the process. And then when there's the slightest little bit of failure, it's like, told you this wouldn't work. You should have voted with us.
Yeah,
you gotta not vote. Don't vote.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna say one more thing before we come to a close here. I think this is really a critical aspect of what you just pointed out. So when I first started my career, I don't think I appreciated this, but around 20 years ago, my sensei told me one of the fastest ways to kill a team that you oversee is to start splitting the team. And that is the recipe of disaster for any team. So if you're a leader listening to this and you have a team that reports to you, splitting the team is catastrophic. And so your entire existence is creating, distributing certain behaviors within that team, meshing that team together. But the moment you start splitting that team, it's deteriorated. And voting, to that point, is a method when you have people raise their hands of winners and losers. Again, this is not multi-voting. This is around decision making. That is an approach for splitting. And so if splitting is what's going to deteriorate the team, you need to be very careful and very sensitive to that, because like John, like you said, it's very commonly used, especially at the higher levels. You'll see like a consultant come in. It's a very effective consultant. I had it done to me as I was a consultant. And people around the room would say, hey, do you guys think we should go with this consultant or not, in front of me? And so, or they would ask you to step out and they would take a vote. And so they're not psychologically thinking. What they're doing is splitting the team. And if I don't get the gig, or if they say we're not going to go with this consultant because 60% said we're not against them, I had presidents or senior vice presidents come up and be like, hey, we voted for this, but like the majority said they didn't want them. Or
well, and think about going the other way.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say you 60% voted for you.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, we've agreed that you're coming in. Well, guess what? Those 40% are going to fight you every step of the way, so that when you fail, they can say at the end, see, told you this wasn't going to work. You should have voted with us.
100%. 100%.
So we have just a couple minutes left, just real quick. The other types of methodologies are not nearly as common. You can actually flip a coin. Believe it or not, that's much better than voting. But that's the only time you'd ever do that is if you have two ideas that are absolutely equal in every way.
Yeah.
And you just don't know which way to go. Flip a coin. But that's very rare. Second is another one is the agree to disagree, right? You just can't reach any kind of a conclusion on this, but you need to move forward. So you say, okay, let's put that in the corner and move on to something else. The only problem with that is that the longer that stays in the corner, the smellier it gets. And so you're going to have to deal with it at some point. But it just buys you time. Maybe you can do more research. Maybe you can get more data during that time. And then the final one, and again, this is another one that's very frightening, is 100% agreement. Now, this isn't consensus. Consensus, you still have some dissenting viewpoints, but they're at least in agreement to move forward with that idea.
They're willing to live with it.
Willing to live with it, right. 100% agreement is everybody is all for option B, and they don't even want to consider any other option. Well, there's a term for that, right? It's called groupthink. And as a facilitator, I actually will stop the meeting if I've got 100% agreement on one option and say, time out, folks. I'm worried that we're starting to go down this path of groupthink, because I see no dissenting opinions or comments or anything. So why are we so focused on that particular solution? And again, if you had that thought bubble above people's heads, more than likely you're going to have a few that are like, yeah, I don't agree with this. I think it's going to fail big time, but I don't want to be viewed as a non-team player. So whatever, Bob, who's sitting next to me, or Susan, who's sitting across the table from me, whatever they decide to go with, I'm going to decide to go with.
John, I want to just say something here. I talked about the decision matrix of the pros and cons, but another tool that I didn't talk about is the decision tree. And in that scenario, I usually pull out the decision tree where I say, okay, if we have 100 consensus on this, okay, I need you to give me 2 possible alternatives.
Right.
Okay, like I'm gonna now, okay, if you all agree, I'm gonna be the one that not agree. Okay, I just need to know what are my other options or other alternatives that I could take. And then what I would do is I would use the 6-hat thinking method then to look at the different perspectives of all those 3 and then repeat it again and kind of force them out of that group thing to put into additional alternatives and then get it. Because a lot of time, the loudest person in the room could really influence everyone on the team. And then everyone just wants to agree because they want to check a box that they make this decision so they could just move on. Right. And without really critically thinking of that decision tree of the alternatives that possibly could be in play here.
All right, very good. Well, good discussion on decision making, and we'll continue this next week.
I love it. All right, take care, everyone, and John, this was awesome.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.